One of the drawbacks of technology is information overload. Information comes to us from all directions. Microsoft Office helps us manage some of that information. However, one of the places we still find a lot of data is Microsoft Excel. The new format holds 1 million rows of data, and that's a lot to try to absorb. We need to know the new and improved tools in Excel for Office transform that data into useful information. Think of it this way. How do we take all those numbers and make them make sense, whether for ourselves or for anyone with whom we have to share this information? In this chapter, we'll look at some of the enhanced features and the brand new features in Excel that will help us manage and understand our data. Excel 2007 was a huge leap forward in conditional formatting, taking us from the restrictive border background font choices that we had known for years to an amazing set of visualizations for our data. It was one of the most exciting things along with charting. In Excel, the icon sets are improved, and we can create conditional formatting with references to a different worksheet in the same workbook. Now we can customize how the icon sets work and how they're applied, and we don't need to spend a lot of time copying or linking our data to the same sheet when we try to use conditional formatting. To introduce you to these features, I'll go to the You Got It Budget and Sales Workbook, which I've opened from the Chapter 5 folder and my Project File folder. Let's look at the data. We'll start with the first 3 tabs, which are about expenses for the You Got It Training Company. The summary sheet does a regular summary, and it also lists some averages for each of those. For this purpose, we've simplified the data, and we're looking at 2 locations, Boise and Billington. For each of these, there is a worksheet for all of 2009, and the amount spent each month on 8 different categories of expenses like leases, power, phone, internet, etc. These are formatted exactly the same way. Let's look at the Billington sheet because I want to apply some conditional formatting. The formatting I want to create is for the expenses that Billington paid in 2009 that are related to wages. We'll look at that value for each month and see if the amount fell within the parameters for the average the company was paying. Yes, I know that this is very simple because we only have 2 locations, so it's like comparing Billington to Boise. But the concept will be the same, and since I don't want to spend a lot of time getting you familiar with the data and getting that set up, we'll work with these 2 locations and our summary sheet. We know that in 2007, we could select some cells and go to conditional formatting to choose one of the many categories, for example, icon sets, to choose the one we liked. I'll go with the check mark, the exclamation mark, and the X, and simply give it a click. Now that applied it, not based on my averages, but based on the data within the same sets, so it's comparing itself to itself. It's also doing some default values by breaking it down into thirds. The top third is good, the bottom third is bad, and the middle third is mediocre. That's what we had in 2007, with a few exceptions. Now I'll click my Undo button to get rid of that, and show you the new features for Office that are more flexible and a lot more usable. The first is the ability to work with different types of icons, rather than just the predefined sets. I'll start the same way by going to conditional formatting. But instead of choosing one of these predefined categories, I'll start with New Rule. When I do this, I get additional options. Now, the top of the window looks the way it did in 2007, but as we move down, we get into the differences. I can still format the cells based on any of these categories, and I'll use icon sets. I can still choose an icon style, and I'll go with the check mark, the exclamation mark, and the red X. I still have the option to also show the icon only, but what's changed now is at the bottom of the screen. Before, when I selected an icon set, I was stuck with the icon set. Whatever it had is what I had to use. Now we can customize the icon. The first thing I need to do is to flip this over, because if I'm looking at wage expenses, if it's greater than the average, that will be bad, not good. So I'll click on the button to reverse icon order. Now I have the red X for anything that will be greater than my measured amount. Now I want to show you that we can change the icon. I definitely want the X because that's bad. But what about the middle and bottom options? Well, I don't care too much about the middle option, so I can click on this arrow and either choose a different icon or not include a cell icon at all. The reason for doing that is because most research shows that if you have more than 10% of the values with a picture on it, people get overwhelmed and the picture loses its value. In this case, we can simply turn off everything in the middle because we don't care about the middle. We're trying to pull out those that exceed the average, and I've also decided that I'll show things that are good. And that's where the third one comes into play. As I said before, we were limited to choosing from just what was in the set. Now, though, not only can I turn an icon off, I also can vary the different images. So instead of using the green check mark, maybe what I want to do is give them a star. So, those are some of the options we now have with Office to vary the icon set or to not show icons at all. Now let's move on to the other part, which is figuring out how we'll calculate which one of these should be used. I won't use %, even though that's the default, so I'll move to the right and change this to a formula. And since I'm here, I like to do them all at once. You don't have to. It's just my preference. So I'll get a red X when the value is greater than or equal to. And now I need to define the value. This is where we see the second enhancement. I don't have to choose this value from this worksheet. So I'll roll this up, get out of the way, and then move down and click on the tab for my expense summary worksheet. I'll click the cell that has the average wages, which happens to be B19. Now, before I get too carried away, expanding this and thinking that I can finish up, I want to do something a little bit more with this value. I don't need people to meet the exact average. I'll give them a 5% leeway, so I need to take this value times 1.05. Now I can roll it back down, and now we can see that they'll get the red X if they have exceeded the average wage by 5%. Now what about the second one? Well, it won't show any icon at all. So, what is my criterion for Billington being okay with their wage expenses? Well, if they hit somewhere between 5% above the average, which we've already defined, down to 20% below the average, then they're doing okay. So we'll do this the same way. We'll roll it up, expense summary, cell B19, except this time we'll make our calculation times 0.8. Roll it back down, just so we can take a look, and of course, our last value is already set for us. If it doesn't match the first one, it doesn't match the second one. That means they'll get a star. So any one of the months where Billington had wages that were below 80% of the average, they'll get a star. I'll go ahead and click OK. There you have it. Now we can see the results of the wonderful enhanced conditional formatting feature, and it seems to have worked just as we planned. Let's take a look and see if we can tell how it's working. Let's start off with our first value. When we look at January, it has a gold star. We might be tempted to say that's because this is the lowest value in that entire row, so obviously that should be a star. But remember, that's not accurate. One of the other features that we also used that is new for Office is the ability to use cross-sheet referencing. So while this value is lower than all the others in the row, it's not the value itself that's giving it the star. It's because it's less than 80% of the average wage expense that we calculated on the expense summary sheet. That's what's making it display the way it is. We can also see similar results for our other cells. For example, if we go over to February, we see that this one does not have an icon because it's in the safe zone, neither too high nor too low. If we move over and look at April, we see that this one gets the dreaded red X because it's more than 5% above our average. I know that sometimes when we get into these complicated types of conditions, and this one isn't too bad, but it's getting there, that's when it gets more challenging to see if they are working the way that we intended. If you're not sure, you should take the time to check. But in this case, our numbers are formatted exactly as we wanted, and this action will simplify things overall, because we can now easily glance at this data and know how it relates to other data in the workbook, without having to know what that other data is or look it up as well. We do have several icons here, and remember that 10% rule. But then again, if you want a visual and it just happens to fall onto a lot of your values, that's okay. Just try not to get icon overload. In other words, I wouldn't want to put icons on every one of these entries because there's about 94 of them on this particular worksheet. So be a little aware of that. There are a few more things I want to mention. In 2007, if you had conditional formatting for a range and one or more of those items resulted in a calculation error, that meant the entire thing stopped working. For Office, they fixed that, and now conditional formatting will ignore any errors and continue applying the conditional format to all of the other cells in the range. That's a good thing. In addition, the performance is better for Office because dependency of the formulas for conditional formatting are actually stored, so they don't need to be re-evaluated as often. All the formatting is cached too, so if you scroll off the screen or move to another worksheet, when you come back, the formatting will display a lot faster than it did. So a few things that you see here are really obvious, including being able to break apart our icon sets and to use cross-sheet conditional formatting. There are also some things behind the scenes that will improve the performance, and I think you'll appreciate those.